Hi folks, today we're going to go over some content accessibility tips that you can utilize inside of your Brightspace courses. By no means is this an exhaustive list of what you can do to add accessibility into your course, but this will cover the majority of the basics. Today we'll be going through video content, document content, articles and links, any websites or resources that you embed via a URL inside your course, and then ways to add some aesthetic and vibes into your course to add just a little bit more engaging and aesthetic material. So I'm going to timestamp all of these different components, so you can feel free to skip around to whatever is useful for you or what you're interested in learning about. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is videos, and we highly encourage folks to always have an option for captioning inside videos. And institutionally, we provide enough tools that hopefully you won't have too much of an issue or require a lot of work on your own to manually caption videos. So one of the most common ones, if you're just looking to do something really quick and efficiently inside of your course, is to create what's called a Brightspace video note. I have here opened a website that has a really quick and dirty guide on how to walk through adding in video notes inside of your Brightspace course. And Brightspace does have an automatic captioning tool. So if you're just wanting to create a quick announcement video or give feedback on a student assignment, or just embed a nice quick little video inside of a module, highly recommend you just do that inside of Brightspace, and then just utilize the captioning tool that's provided inside this tutorial. The next option is to use Zoom and to use Zoom's captioning and transcripts tool. A very popular tool for us to use institutionally. One thing to note, however, though, is that Zoom does have a 365-day or a 1-year retention policy on that video content. So you will need to be mindful that if you're going to be wanting to use this content longer than a year, to download that file content. When you download the file content, it will also download your transcript for you, but captioning will not be available after that. You'll need to, if you want to continue to use captioning, you'll need to re-upload that file, the transcript file, as well as the video file, and host it somewhere long-term for captioning purposes. So then if you're wondering about an option for where to host Zoom recordings long-term, and if you want to continue to have captions enabled and easily accessible, YouTube is an option. And again, I'm going to have here linked tutorial walking through how to edit, upload, and revise any closed captioning tools that you have. Something to note is that YouTube does have a pretty powerful automated captioning tool and requires just slight manual review depending on the type of content you have and the technological terms that you have. So know that YouTube can be a really good option for long-term repository of video content to ensure accessibility for captions. Additionally, you can also just simply upload that transcript file that you got from Zoom and use that as kind of a starting point if you don't want to wait for the automated captions to upload. But this tutorial really walks through all of the basics of how to get captioning enabled inside of your Brightspace or inside of your YouTube content that you can then embed into your Brightspace course or distribute to your students however you want to. Another option for video content is to use Echo 360 Classroom Capture. And I have here linked a little bit more information on Echo 360 and then how to put in a service desk request to have access to that. One thing to note too is if you could please request to have a transcript available for those videos, because we currently do not have an institutional license on captioning, but the more folks that start requesting captioning available and transcripts available for those, then hopefully this sooner we'll get to be able to have an institutional license. These can be really useful for in-class lectures, or if you're wanting to do pre-recorded lecture material inside of your classroom, can be a great option as well. So hopefully within these different components, there's just really low stakes video notes. If you're wanting to do something a little bit more at home, a little bit more thought through, or something a little bit more planned, Zoom can be a great option. And then if you're needing something really long-term, YouTube can be a great option for a repository. And then Echo 360 Classroom Capture can also be a great option for something inside of your classroom. One other thing that I want to note is and I don't have it linked here, but I will have it linked in the video description, is the Creative Services Studio, where you go into the studio and film your content. It will not come to you, it will come in Box. So Box does not have a captioning tool, so you will need to find an option out of all these different ones to get a transcript. So what you could do is then upload it to YouTube, give it some time to do the automated captioning, and then you have those captions to edit and then a transcript to download from that. There's a host of other tools too out there, but these are the 4 that I would recommend for ease of use and what our institution readily supports. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about is documents. So things that you will link inside of your course or handouts that you'll give to students, or any sort of documents that you will have available to students. Those tend to be Word documents, PowerPoints, and PDFs tend to be the most popular. By no means is that an exhaustive list, but those are the most popular. So those are the ones that I'm going to cover. I first want to mention the reserves request form at the library. This is a fantastic way for you to get resources embedded directly into your Brightspace course that have already been through an OCR reader, which is an optical character reader scanner. And so what that means is that when you put in a request for a certain chapter of a book or a certain reading, it will be scanned using an appropriate reader so that the document is already tagged appropriately and is already screen reader compliant. What takes a lot of work is to have to go back to old scans and remediate and revise those scans. So if you're starting with a new reading and perhaps it's a book that you already have in your personal library, rather than just scanning it in your office's scanner, I'd highly recommend putting in the reserve request form for that reading to ensure that it's a quality scan as well as an appropriately tagged document scan so that it's screen reader compliant and everything looks nice, is very easily viewable on side of phones, tablets, smaller screens, etc. And then of course is screen reader compliant for students that want to use a screen reader or read aloud feature. Another option is that if you're building your own sorts of documents is to use the accessibility checker inside of Word, inside of PowerPoint, and inside of any other Microsoft tools. One thing to know is that PowerPoints are hosted in Adobe, and I'm not going to cover using the Adobe Accessibility Checker. It's a little bit more robust of a tool, but if your Word documents and your PowerPoint documents pass the accessibility checker, then you won't have any problems then when you save them as PDFs, they'll be compliant. So all that to say, it's a lot easier to start with accessibility at the beginning rather than having to go back and remediate. And so this article here walks you through how to access the accessibility checker inside of Word, PowerPoint, Excel as well, any of the Microsoft Suite products, very similar process, as well as some different versions depending on how you're utilizing those tools. And then also gives you a walkthrough of how to remediate those errors if you see them. Another option too, if you don't want to go through the review process, in this case, there's no accessibility errors. And the reason why is because Microsoft has a lot of already pre-created templates that you can use that already pass an accessibility check. So if you noticed that you're going through your PowerPoints or your Word documents and there's a lot of errors, or perhaps you're starting something from the beginning and you don't have a template yet, I'd highly recommend utilizing this new From Template tool. There's a lot of different templates out there. If you go online too, in that link that's provided, a lot more than just what's available here. And the great thing is that everything is already tagged appropriately. All you'll need to do is go in, add in your content, add in your own images, run that accessibility checker just to ensure that all of your items are alt tagged appropriately. And it will help you save you a lot of time rather than having to go back and remediate an old PowerPoint that has a lot of accessibility issues. So again, it's a lot easier to start from the beginning with something that's already compliant, and then just simply add in your own content, go back to that review tool, make sure everything's good to go, and then you can export it then as a PDF if you prefer to have PDFs available to students. So let's go ahead and go back into and just review a little bit. So in regards to documents, highly recommend utilizing that reserves request forms for any scanned textbook material, or any other resources to see if the library has availability for those. And then if you're going to be creating your own Word or PowerPoint or PDF documents, utilize the Microsoft Accessibility Checker and Template tool, and then save those accessible documents as PDFs. If there is interest in remediating PDF content, I'm happy to have a discussion and a chat about that. It does require a little bit more knowledge, but is totally manageable to learn. But again, it's much easier if you start with a compliant document, export it as a PDF, and then it will continue to stay compliant. Okay, next thing that I want to mention really quickly, and I'm not going to open up these tools just to be mindful of time, but they will be linked below if you are interested. And I do want to note these are not tools that are supported by the institution. They are just simply 2 screen reading tools that might be useful for you and or your students for reading. One is the Bionic Reading tool, and it's a Chrome extension. And so students can simply just add it to their Chrome browser. Let me just go ahead and open and show a demo of what that looks like without actually turning the tool on. Simply what it does is it turns any sort of web-based material, so any sort of news articles, journal articles, etc. What it's going to do is it's going to create this Bionic Reading feature where it bolds certain characters in a word to help with ease of reading, and the aim is to help with comprehension of long text. So again, that's not something necessarily that is needed to use. It just might be something helpful to encourage your students to use if there's a lot of reading in your course, or if students are struggling getting through comprehension of reading, or maybe just need something to, our brains thrive on novelty. So maybe just a nice little tool to check out, and it might be useful for some students. Some students might find it more distracting, but might be an option for some students. A very similar one is the Beeline Reader. And what this one does instead is it creates a ombre effect to text. Oops, let me zoom back out here. So as you can see here, rather than bolding certain content, it's going to create an ombre effect on the lines. Some folks find the Bionic Reader fantastic, don't like the Beeline Reader with the ombre effect, and vice versa. So just a couple options of just really easy Chrome plugins for students if you do have a lot of journal articles linked, or a lot of news articles, or web-based. So this won't work necessarily on PDFs or Word documents. It has to be a web-based tool. So if you're using a lot of those, might be a great option to encourage students to try out and see if it helps a little bit with reading comprehension. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that on articles and links, again, nothing necessarily that you can do to make those articles and links better, because the onus is on whoever publishes those pages to be web compliant. But sometimes it can be helpful to just give an extra tool that might be useful if it's a very text heavy page for students. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is aesthetics and vibes inside of your course. So, maybe you've done the work now, all of your video content is captioned, or there's transcripts available, all of the documents that you have pass an accessibility check, all of your articles and links. Again, you can't control if they're accessible or not, but you can at least give students some resources on hopefully better ways to engage with that material, or some options to make some of that heavy reading perhaps a little bit more user-friendly for them. And then let's get into a little bit about the actual course design of your work and what we can leverage inside of Brightspace. So Brightspace has a fantastic accessibility checker. And again, here's a tutorial walking through on all of the ins and outs of how to utilize the accessibility checker. I will walk you folks through that right now, though, just so you can see it in action. And the biggest issues that Brightspace and any sort of accessibility checker for content is going to want you to review and remediate is alt tagging of images. And that's adding in a description of the image for folks that are not able to experience that image, whether that's because of vision impairment, or perhaps their internet is really, really slow and it's not loading that image for them, or if they're having internet connectivity issues, etc. There needs to be an alternative option for students to experience what that image is without being able to actually see that image. Another one is color contrast, to make sure that the color contrast is appropriate for a multitude of different reasons, ensuring that the color is bright enough for folks that are on smaller devices, larger screens, and for folks that have color blindness. And so the Brightspace tool will basically help ensure that, yes, you're more than welcome to add colors into your text. We just want to be sure that it's compliant, that all folks can be able to have access to read that material. And then finally, headings and reading order. And so that just helps ensure for folks that are using screen readers or read aloud tools, that it is appropriately tagging the document so that it's reading in the correct order and not jumping around all over the page and jumbling up the content. So let's do a little bit of an accessibility check. Let's say that you have a page here, you've added in your images, you've added in your content, and we look at it, I'm like, okay, everything looks fine. But what we need to do is just to go in, and let me go into instructor view here so we can show how to edit. And there is this button that looks like an eyeball icon with a check mark underneath it. This is going to become your best friend. You'll utilize this tool a lot for the accessibility checker. I highly recommend anytime you edit a page in Brightspace, the last thing you want to do before you update the page is just quickly utilize the accessibility checker. Even if you don't think you've changed anything that would need to be remediated, I think just getting into the habit of just checking it, you never know, sometimes things can get broken or something that to a seeing person is okay, it might not be okay. So I just highly recommend you go into edit a page, edit anything, run that accessibility checker. What you're going to do when your content is all in and you just want to check for compliance and accessibility is you're going to select this button, and what Brightspace is going to do is it's going to pull up some errors for you. First error that's coming up here is that images must be marked as decorative or have an alternative description. And what that means is that there is an image that does not have an alt tag attached to it. So what you can see is when you go into the accessibility checker, and you can also move this around too. I find that sometimes it's not helpful when it's overlaid right exactly where I'm doing the work. So you can move this around and have an alt tag. So you have a couple options. One is that you can select this question mark button, and it's going to provide you detailed instructions on how to create or provide an alternative text. But all the alternative text needs to be is just simply a short description of what the image is. If the image is decorative, meaning that the image does not have any importance to the actual content of the page, so if that's something that's just purely stylistic, you can mark the image as decorative, and then you do not need to provide an alt tag. However, in this case, this image is not decorative. In this case, it is a headshot of the instructor of this course. And so we want to let students know that that's what that image is. And so we're just going to give it a short description. So headshot of Iggy the lion in a white LMU t-shirt. It does not need to be a long description. Usually 140 characters or less is recommended. Obviously, though, it very much so depends on the type of image with how descriptive you want to be. And you also want to be mindful that you're not adding in anything to the image that's not there. So we wouldn't want to say like, oh, I wonder if Iggy's happy, or I wonder if he's excited about the semester, anything like that. We just simply want to describe what the image is. So then we've added in the alt tag, and then we're going to select repair. And now that's repaired, and then it's going to move us on to the next error. And in this case, it says text must have a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. And again, it's showing us the issue text is highlighted. So what we can do is we can go in and highlight that text, and we're going to change the text color. Now, usually when you are creating text and changing the colors, we can already remediate it here because we have the contrast color checker right here inside this tool. So in this case, I started with this pastel pink color, and we'll see here, it does not pass with small or large contrast. One thing to note is that the bare minimum is to pass on large. However, unless the color is critical, for some reason, I'd highly encourage you to find a shade of that color that passes both in small and large contrast, solely because a lot of students do use the mobile app in Brightspace. And so if the text is very, very small and not passing, students might not be able to fully read the material inside of Brightspace. So let's say I'm really committed and I really want some sort of pink shade. I can either just toggle this over until I get to a passing point. And I see here now, this shade now, it has significantly changed the color of the pink, but again, unless that pastel pink is very, very critical to the content or to the instructional material, in that case, we can have a different conversation about how we can provide accessibility while utilizing that color, but perhaps using it as some sort of background color or some sort of decorative image with that color, but then still having the actual text be a compliant color. So you can kind of tinker then with these different colors, see what passes. But again, highly recommend if you can get a pass on small and large, very, very encouraged. And then once you've selected that color, then you'll go ahead and save. And you have remediated the 2 errors that were available, but I'd recommend one more time, just run through, because this is what we want to see. Is we want to see success, no accessibility issues detected, and then you can go ahead and update your page. And like I mentioned, anytime that you go in and want to edit your pages, just run that quick little accessibility checker. It takes 2 extra seconds, and hopefully you'll get to a space where all the time everything is passing and you can feel very confident that your Brightspace content is passing accessibility checking. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is a new tool that's available inside of Brightspace. It's called Creator Plus. And this tool, the elements that you create inside of Creator Plus are technically start as accessible. However, once you start adding in your own images and text, etc., you'll still want to become very familiar with that accessibility check tool. So I just want to show you folks some of what's available inside of Creator Plus. And again, I'll have linked all of the different tools and elements that are available for you to utilize inside. But so what these tools are is it's just an ability to add some micro interactions inside of your course content. So in this case, we have a couple different things. We have accordions where you can build in drop down items. And again, this tool itself, when it's created, the template for it is accessible. However, if you start adding in colored text, images, etc., you'll want to be sure that you're utilizing that accessibility check tool to ensure compliance. And then a same thing with tabs. Again, these can only be hosted inside of Brightspace, so these will live inside of your Brightspace content pages. Also, some click and reveal options here. Again, just if you're wanting to add in some micro interactions for your students, or just create something different than just a lot of paragraph content, as well as timelines that can be embedded in, and then little flip cards. One thing to note is that I won't be covering, I'll show you how to get into editing and utilizing the tool. There's also the option to create some assessment features. However, these assessment features currently do not tie in to Brightspace's gradebook. That is on their roadmap. So once that's a little bit further down the line, then I can do another recording kind of walking through what those look like. But for now, I'm just going to talk about the stylistic things that you can do. So option that you have too is the ability to do call outs, quotes, and emojis. And so call out is just simply a box that calls out key information. You have a couple different options. You can have an exclamation point, question mark, no title. You can also do some quote material. So you can have a more robust quote, smaller quote, etc. And then you also have the ability to add in emojis too, if you want to just add in a little bit of flair into your course content. One great thing about utilizing the emojis is that they are already screen reader compliant and already alt tagged for you. So you're not needing to go in and add in all of those alt tags. So if you want to add in some images without having to do a bunch of work to add in those alt tags, emojis can be a great option. Let me show you really quick how to access the Creator Plus features. And then I, again, will provide some more literature if you're kind of wanting to dig a little bit deeper, but for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward tool. So you just go into any page that you're working on, edit HTML as you would to start editing in any other Brightspace page. And let me just go down to the bottom of the page here. And you're just going to move your cursor to wherever you want that content. And then you're going to navigate to this plus button in your editing tool. Couple different things that you can add in here. One thing is a divider, and it's just a small gray line in case you're just wanting to divide up content or split content. Emojis, pretty straightforward. Lots of different that you can choose from. It's very, very simple, or very, very similar to the Apple suite of emojis. But so let's say, you know, we're doing something with a brain, and that is the emoji that we wanted to use. You can also change the size of the emoji. It's going to change depending on text size as well. So that's how you can manipulate the size of that emoji if you want to. Then to add in other things, symbols, again, if that's useful to you and the content that you have, lots of different options in here. So know that those exist as well. And then the next thing is the insert practice. Like I mentioned, this does exist. I don't want to spend too much time on it solely because most folks, if they're doing some sort of, even if it's just a formative assessment, still want to be able to see how students are responding and tie it to the gradebook, even for just pass fail point value. So these are here. Just know though that currently there's no ability for them to send to the gradebook. So in that case, it might not be useful for you at this time, but hopefully soon Brightspace will have that availability and we can dig a little bit deeper then into how to set those up and tie them to grade items. But the ones that are probably going to be more useful for now are the ones that help add some aesthetic value into your course is the insert element. Pretty straightforward what they are: accordions, tabs, click and reveal, call out were those large quoted boxes, not to be confused with a stylized quote, timeline, and a flip card. And all you simply need to do is just select whichever element that you want to have. Give some basic learner instructions already. You'll note that there are these question marks riddled throughout Brightspace. If you click on those, it's going to give you some more instructions as to what this means and what it should be for. You do have the ability to change this text and make it more meaningful to the content that you have. And then you have the ability to style the actual content that's going to go inside of your flip card. You'll see here you have the ability to add an image, and it's going to want you to create an alternative text or select the image as decorative. And like I mentioned, if it has any value to the instructional material, please, please, please give it an alt text. Only mark it as decorative if it is purely a decorative image. So in this case, you'll add your information. You can also add different rows if you want to have lots of different rows to that. And then also what goes on the back of the card. And so then you can add in your content for what goes on the back of that flip card. And then you'll have the ability to preview. So you can see here's the instructions, title, content. You can flip title, content. And if you're happy with how that looks, you can select insert. If you want to go back and edit, you can go back and edit. And then when you're ready, then you just select insert, and then your element will be added. And once you've inserted it, then you can go ahead and save and close. And then that content has been now saved and is an interactive piece inside of your course. So it's a really quick overview on Creator Plus as well. It's one of those tools where just takes a little bit of time interacting with it, creating some things, seeing what you like and what you don't like. And again, there will be some literature provided if you want to read a little bit more to all of the features of the tool. But like I mentioned, it's pretty straightforward of kind of just selecting that component type that you want, and then just designing it. And like I mentioned, these are only available inside of your Brightspace pages. You can't take the code from this and necessarily copy it into another web page that you have. The Creator Plus tool is meant to only be utilized inside of Brightspace. For folks that are really interested and potentially want to create their own custom things, and if you love coding, love JavaScript, etc., you do have the ability to do that. I'm not going to go deep into this at all, other than if you are interested in this route, please be mindful as well that you are checking accessibility and compliance on these things. And additionally, the Office of Online Learning and the instructional technology team are working on building some more custom tools and features that faculty are requesting. So if there's something that you feel like, maybe the elements aren't quite there of what you're looking for, but you're wanting to have some sort of interactive piece inside of Brightspace within these Creator Plus elements, shoot us an email and we'll see if we can add that to our roadmap as well. And we can create some custom code that is compliant, that can be used at an institutional level. So let me just do a quick little review of everything that we've gone through together. And I know this was a lot. And so to be mindful of cognitive overload, by no means is there an expectation that you should remember how to do any of this, but we will have resources and links provided for all of these different things. And so I hope that maybe you found at least one new add-on tool or feature that either you or your students can utilize to help encourage a classroom that is equitable to all of your learners and accessible to all of your learners. So just a quick review, video content, the big ask for that is to please have an option that provides captioning and or transcripts. Both would be fantastic, but at least one option is better than none. Documents, to utilize the reserves request form for new scans or old scans. If they're very old scans and are showing some wear and age or just You know, so when it's a scan of a scan of a scan, they get to be a little bit difficult to read even for a sighted person. Let's reach out to the library and see if they can help us get some new scans, utilizing the Word and PowerPoint accessibility checker and templates, ensuring compliance there, and then saving them as a PDF. For articles and links, like I mentioned, there's unfortunately not much we can do to ensure, you know, that the New York Times has compliant articles, but what we can do is to help students with reading fatigue with some added in tools. And then finally, when it comes to the aesthetics and our actual course content, is to become very familiar with that accessibility checker. And then leveraging perhaps some Creator Plus tools. And the last thing I want to mention is just a short little pitch for the Office of Online Learning. If you're wanting to have some accessible template materials inside of Brightspace, where there's already some graphics added in, headings and structure already created, and you want some legwork done for you, check out our office's website, going into the summer design portal. And you'll see here that we have some different resources, some faculty templates, toolkits, resources, media support, etc. So feel free to check out that website if you're interested in that, and then don't hesitate to reach out to us if you want to have a further conversation about some accessibility features or creating a media enriched course that still ensures compliance and access to all your students. So thanks so much for your time. I hope that this was helpful, and in the spirit of Universal Design for Learning, you know that it is a marathon and not a sprint. By no means is this an expectation that you'll have all of these things done by the next time of your course iteration, but we want to take that +1 approach, or what is one component, one piece, one item that we think we can try and tackle this semester, master it. And then once we feel confident that, all right, captioning, I know I can do that. I know I have tools and resources and very comfortable with ensuring that all of my videos are captioned. What's the next thing? What is the next +1 that I can add on to course content? So I hope that this wasn't overwhelming or too much information, but that you found a piece or two that you feel like you can really utilize in your course instruction. So thanks so much, folks. I really appreciate your time, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any further questions.